This is the One Deeper podcast, where we talk about cognitive science and AI. So, before I introduce my guest on this episode, I thought it was best to give a little background on my motivation for recording this. For the past year or so, I've been learning about complex systems. So, what is a complex system? I'm going to read you a part of the Wikipedia entry on this topic. A complex system is a system composed of many components which may interact with each other. Examples of complex systems are Earth's global climate, organisms, the human brain, infrastructure such as the power grid, transportation, or communication systems, complex software and electronic systems, social and economic organizations, an ecosystem, a living cell, and ultimately the entire universe. Complex systems are systems whose behavior is intrinsically difficult to model due to the dependencies, competitions, relationships, or other types of interactions between their parts or between a given system and its environment. The term complex system often refers to the study of complex systems, which is an approach to science that investigates how relationships between a system and its parts gives rise to its collective behaviors and how the system interacts and forms relationships with its environment. So that was a lot, but that's the general idea. I really encourage you to take a look at the Wikipedia entry for this topic, which is really interesting, and it's a really wide and broad scientific discipline that touches a lot of areas. So in that vein, we can model a team or an interacting set of teams as a complex system. And it's that approach I'm currently taking on applying that to Dota 2, which brings me to our guest. Melchior, I probably butchered that again, Seleri Hillenkamp, also known as Seleri, is captain of the professional Dota 2 team Gaimin Gladiators. My goal was to probe what a professional team thinks about and works on in terms of team coordination, what makes a good team, and how teams interact before, during, and after their games. It was an awesome discussion. Even if you don't care about Dota, I think there's a lot to get out of it. And but of course, tangents are everywhere. I hope you enjoyed it. There are really some gems in there, so I hope you listen. And thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm just gonna call you Salary. Screw it. But welcome, man. Thank you for taking the time to I know you have better things to do right now because you have gotta get ready for Lima, I guess, right? But hey, first of all, congrats on the performance. You guys did pretty well this DPC
Yeah,
so
thank
far.
you. No, I'm happy to be here. Excited. Not sure what to expect, so it should be fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, so like this is actually quite different from the other episodes that I've done in the sense that like previously all the episodes are very like just very science deep dive science stuff. This is also very sciencey, but I want to get your input, before I elaborate on what we've been doing, just so that I get like the fresh input from you. And if you don't feel like answering any of the questions, like there are no like official questions, I'm just gonna ask you random stuff. But if you feel like, oh, this might give away an advantage to somebody, or like I don't want to answer this, please by all means, do that. But like it's just so. How long have you been playing Dota, man?
uh, I mean, a friend showed me the game in 2012, I think, at this point. So time flies. It's a long time ago now. Yeah, back then I just played a bit for fun. So yeah, but I've played the game for about 11 years now.
Oh man, yeah. So I mean, I was playing during the Warcraft days, right? Like I remember when Mirana was first introduced. Like that's that's how long I've been playing. So like, well, like I don't play regularly anymore because I'm a recovering addict. So like, it's just like when I start, like, dude, I swear to God, when I start playing, that's all I want to do. It's like everything else is just boring. Like going out is boring. My friends are boring. Like doing anything else is boring. It's like that next MMR, that next match.
Yeah,
It's a
you got
problem.
to be
So
careful.
I've had to yeah, I've had to control myself. So like when do you decide you wanted to do this like at a very high level, like a professional level?
Um, I think the same year I started playing, as I watched the second international TI2, and it
Mhm.
just looked really fun. So I thought, okay, I should try this at least. So I just started playing with random teams. We just played some practice games against other random teams just for fun, for the most part. So
Yeah,
very early
yeah,
on, I started just playing with
yeah,
random people that also wanted to try, or just we were just playing for fun at least. Because 5v5 and like
yeah,
thinking of
yeah,
some
yeah.
cool draft, it was pretty fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, like I was like I was never I was by no stretch of the imagination a professional, right? Like let's just make that very clear. But like I remember so in Sri Lanka was, I don't know if you ever used G Arena. Did you ever play on
No,
that?
I
Like
didn't get to
Warcraft 3
experience that.
G Arena? Okay, okay. Okay, man, that's a whole another disaster, right? But like because none of us could afford actual Warcraft, so everyone pirated this shit. And in Sri Lanka, a fucking tiny island, so like a small and our internet was so bad that we couldn't play with anyone else abroad. So we just played with people on the island, right? So we played like tournaments, and we had fun and all this other stuff. And I remember like recently so when Dota 2 was released, I recently checked like my history, like 10 years ago, and I've played games with like Snare and all. And I was like, damn, man, that's pretty cool. And like this motherfucker just won how many millions of dollars like last like few months ago. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, maybe I should have kept on that fucking path. But anyways, anyway, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, so you decided to do this like at a very high level. Okay, so let's ask first. Um, when you were trying to find a team, what were you thinking about? Like, let's say you're on GG now. Like when I mean, you've been on several other teams. Like, what are the kind of things you're looking for, especially as a captain? Like when you're building a team around you, what are we thinking
um,
here?
so in the beginning and all the I played in so many. I think I played with like 100 different teammates because I was just making random teams. So
Okay.
I got to learn a lot
Hmm.
from experience, where I wasn't sure what are you looking for, like what makes sense. So you're just playing with people that okay they're probably pretty good, or I hope they're good. And you just start playing. You just learn along the way like different dynamics and how people work, how people talk. It was pretty interesting. So actually,
Right,
before
right. No, it's nice that you mentioned the word. Sorry, sorry. Go ahead.
okay,
Go ahead. Go,
yeah.
go
So
ahead. Go
so
ahead. You were saying
before
something.
like before COVID started, I think it was 2019. I took a break for a half a year, and I thought maybe I should just give up on Dota and do something else. And then I thought, okay, I'll give it one more try after the summer break. And
Why was that? What was the what was why were we thinking like no fuck this? What's the
so I
what
got
was the
pretty
thinking there?
close every so often. Like my rating was pretty high, but it was just hard to break through in Europe. It felt because in Europe it was just
Hmm.
there's like this layer of teams you had to get through, where it felt like if you're not on these teams, it's pretty
Right,
hard to
right,
break
right.
through. So I thought, okay, it's not gonna happen. But then I
Gotcha.
thought, okay, I'll grind for a little bit, and then like I didn't really choose my team back then. It was like a Immortal Faith, a coach, just thought, okay, this guy's grinding pretty hard. There's not that many supports. Let's give it a try. Then actually, I missed.
Hmm.
I actually missed. No, I actually chose my team, I guess, because I missed his team. Because the qualifier they were going to play, I already had a scheduled vacation of my family, so I missed the qualifier. Then they qualified to a LAN without me.
Okay.
Thought, oh shit, I made a mistake. And
Yeah. No.
then I actually made a team with some friends where we felt like we had a really good mood and we were feeling good playing together. That ended up being the Viking because we beat them in some qualifiers and they disbanded after that, and then we became the new Viking GG. So that was actually a
Nice,
team
nice,
where we
nice, nice.
felt that we had a lot of fun playing, and like losing would just be part of it.
I'm I'm gonna take notes. Uh, I'm gonna take notes.
Yeah,
Lot of
that
fun playing.
that
So
is
fun
very
is a big
important actually.
yeah,
It's something I learned
yeah.
over time because you're gonna lose a lot, you're gonna have rough times, and I don't know from my experience so far, atmosphere is the absolute most important thing.
Right. Atmosphere. So okay. So when you're like in inlands or just hanging out, like okay, I got you. I got you. That's cool. It's actually interesting that you mentioned the word dynamics because that's what we are all about. Okay, so I'll give you more details later on, but like just that's a kind of thing we're looking at is that how do the individual components, in this case the 5 players of a Dota team, right, how do they come together to generate a good performance, right? So my supervisor, his work was doing, with like physical people, actual human beings, like moving stuff, coordinating stuff, and I had the idea of like, yo, let's just put this in esports and see what we can find. It might be something interesting. So that's what we're kind of thinking about. So okay, having fun, having a good rapport with your teammates, obviously is super important, right? Okay, so let's like, so I was just thinking, man, like just like work backwards from like, before a big tournament, like international, during, and then what you guys do afterwards, right? So I guess from the most common thing is a boot camp, right? Before you sort of head into a tournament. So what do teams generally do in this boot camping period?
Um, so more often than not, what I've experienced is just having a boot camp during an online tournament. So recently we had a boot camp during the DPC, the professional league. But the one boot camp I
Mhm.
experienced where it was a lot different was before the last TI. So it was last year before TI 11, where we had a boot camp in Malaysia for 3 weeks, I think. So this is only practice.
Okay.
There's no games. So this is like a authentic boot camp, you could say, I guess. So we're just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is where this was just like the grind place where we just practiced a lot against other teams, thought about how we want to play, etc. And um, think about it because in these places, I think you can already feel when the if the mood is not good. Here, you already kind of ruined yourself in a way
You already know.
because it's very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
every team probably has this at some point, unless you're having a real rough time where you have some winning streak. Where I think we won
Hmm.
24 games out of or 20 games out of 24 at one point. We're winning almost everything. Any team,
Yeah.
it didn't matter. Chinese, Europe, it didn't really matter. They all just got crushed. You feel okay. We're doing pretty good. Then you have a little bit worse period, and you can just feel if the atmosphere is not good, you can feel the mood drop. Like, man, we don't even know what winning is anymore, which is a little bit
Right,
weird,
right,
of
right. No,
course.
I'm
Wait a
feeling you,
second.
man.
Wait a second. A few days ago, you're winning every single game. How can this be? How
Right,
can the
right.
shift be this big?
So exactly. So this is the key thing, right? So the kind of things that we're interested in, as scientists, is what the hell happened there? Like, what is there something that we can measure, right? That can tell us, yo, this happened. So maybe we can tweak it around to see and see if it improves something. So that's kind of thing that we're interested in. What makes good teams perform, and then we have a very particular uh, complex systems methodology that we're looking at that we use to identify these things. But that's cool. This is cool. So this is good. Like that. This is the kind of stuff that we're trying to solve. But then again, it's not just Dota, right? This is like any team, man.
Yeah,
Like any team, like in the NBA or whatever. Like all they're crushing it, and then all of a sudden something just changes and lose over and over again.
yeah. I think
But yeah.
honestly that a lot is probably predictable beforehand. And like when I look back, when you're competing, you should be confident. So we're confident. We know we can win. We're gonna own. But looking back, I think we did as good as we could have probably. Where
Hmm.
like the chemistry of the team or like how the team is built matters a lot. Where looking back, I can see that it just wasn't gonna work with the people that we had. We were just not compatible. Even though like now
Right.
we're
Right.
after TI, we changed two people, and now it feels like now it's fully compatible. Like it matters a lot actually. If you have one, I think just having one clog, so to say, like that doesn't fit. Of course, people change, right?
Right. Right.
But when it doesn't fit and things go wrong, that's
So
when things shift the other direction. I think.
definitely. So the thing is, now this is a problem that a lot of teams have, right? Finding the right components, and the terms that you importantly just mentioned, like okay, like how it works. This now we replace two components, all of a sudden it feels like a much better unit, right? But these are not very
Yeah.
quantified. You know what I mean? Like you can't put a number on this. It's kind of hard, and we are sort of trying to say, okay, is there a number we can put on this, like something we can measure? That's cool. So like when you are so you're in boot camp, you're trying to like prep. Is there like sort of what's the like how do you find matches to play against? Like you can't just go online and play with. Do you just play online with your like with? I know there are Smurfs and like tough stuff, but how do you how do you practice without giving away too much about what
Yeah,
you're
so
practicing?
there's
How
like
does
two
that work?
different ways to practice. There's where you just play alone or with one of your teammates. This is what they call public matchmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally the name. You have a rating and you play against others with similar ratings. And then there's you just call them we call them scrims usually, but it's a private match where you just find a game with another team that also wants to practice. And for TI, we already know the groups beforehand, for example, at one point. So we're playing and practicing against teams in the other group. And then
Mm-hmm.
you cannot be afraid to give things away because you need to practice, right? And everyone has that mindset.
Right, right.
So
Oh,
you
that's
just go
interesting.
all out in
Uh,
these practice games and you don't really like it's all private. Only
that's
the two of
interesting.
you know it. Hopefully, no one leaks, and then then you just go for it.
That's cool. I actually didn't. That's interesting that you still go all out in these streams. Like you play the best strategies, the best things you can
Yeah, well,
possibly
you're
think of.
never gonna play 100% because you're trying your best, right? But at the back in the back of your head, you know this is just a practice game. So some weird things will happen
Right, right.
always.
True, 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 true. Definitely. Oh, okay. So that's cool. So what kind of analysis do you do? Like, let's say, like, okay, you're about to play a secret, right? Like, I mean, obviously you've played these guys a bunch of times, but like, is what kind of things do you do? Like, I know, like for example, basketball. They go over previous games and like they do all the plays and like look at where he went, look at where he goes, like all this stuff. So give me a rundown of like the analysis that you do before you play opponent.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now we do it a lot different actually, but I'll talk about how we did it at TI before, where before
Hmm.
games or prep was mostly done by our coach in terms of preparing for this specific opponent in what they prioritize in the strategy department, in heroes mostly, where we didn't focus too much on the details, the small details, like I don't even have to specify, just the small details in game where it's not really, it's hard to comprehend this. Because in theory, it is nice to know these small
Hmm.
details, but if you hear all this extra info before you play, it's almost like
Hmm.
you're thinking about this and now you're not playing anymore. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I got you.
we never really did that, and most of our analysis, I would say, was after games, mostly after practice games, where we just look at the in Dota you have replays. We just look at the match basically, like the VOD, and we just analyze whatever is worth learning from. And what we mostly did at TI was, or the bootcamp before TI in Malaysia, we watched a lot when we lost as well, and we watched less when we won. So this is
Hmm.
interesting. In hindsight, I think this is
Yeah, that makes
very
sense.
interesting, where we mostly saw ourselves lose and the bad things we did. So thinking back, that was probably not a good idea, but that's how we did it.
Yeah, I mean, like, eh, I mean, how do you figure out the patterns, right? Like the patterns between like, okay, what you did well and you won, and what you did well and you lost, because you could do everything right and still lose, right? That's one of the things in especially a game like Dota. Like anything can happen. Like like for example, I don't understand the point of the Dota Plus, like the win prediction thing, because like it makes no sense to me. It's like at one point it'll say 90% prediction probability, and then the other team wins like 10 minutes later. It's like
90% is 9 out of 10, right?
so Yeah, 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 yeah,
So that's
yeah.
still
True.
10% loss.
Like, yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, don't worry, anything can happen. So like, so what are the in terms of how you okay? Let's talk about how you guys coordinate, right? Like, okay, actually, so post game analysis. Do you the kind of when you do a post game analysis of your own performance? What kind of things do you look at in your own performance? Like you already said the games that you lost, but like anything in particular in terms of oh, so do you? I guess for every match you sort of have an idea of what made you guys lose or win, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we in these games we definitely did. We were focusing on the things that are mostly in our control, that are repeatable, that are patterns. So
Ah, right.
like every sport, you
Mm-hmm.
start in Dota. We call it the early game. Dota, we have the laning phase where this happens every game. So if a laning phase goes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
this is perfect to learn from because you're gonna do it every single game again and again and again. And 40 minutes in, when someone misclicks a spell or presses a wrong button, press the button better next time. Like, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that
what are
just
you gonna
happens,
do,
right?
right?
If I
No,
click
yeah,
the
that's
wrong
cool.
button, someone could tell me why didn't you press it? Well, I mean, I'm sorry. It's, that just
Yeah,
can
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
You need to focus on
for
the
sure,
things that you can
for
actually
sure.
repeat, because that's something you can
That's
use
that's that,
in the
that,
future. Because there's always going to be these weird moments, just like in football, where it's like, oh, he shot from this angle, and now you should have hit it a bit different. Okay, that's great and all, but maybe that will never happen again. So you can focus on this,
that's
but it's
true. Yeah,
not really useful. So you need to look at the
that's great advice for life.
yeah, it's kind of like life, I guess. It's like just focus on the things that will be repeatable, that happen a lot. Yeah, that's the things we usually focus on.
Absolutely. Nice. Okay. Cool. Mm, so let's talk about communication, right? So in-game communication, like what's the general sort of as I don't know, I don't know what to ask about, but like just the in-game communication, is there a structure to it? Because like when I listen to the in-game communication sometimes in like these random clips that they play, I'm like, dude, what the hell is this guys talking about? Like this fights about it, the fights happening, and like it just sounds like complete chaos. But is there something in there? You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think many teams have a good structure for it. When I listen to some of these clips, I'm also not sure what they're saying. But I think, uh, I mean, the way I'm not sure if we're still in the time period of before during TI, because after that a lot of things have changed for us. But in this time period, the way I mean we still do this similar in the sense that we don't have one person leading the communication fully. It's more of a team
Hmm.
effort where people need to give more input on their strengths when they are strong. If someone hits a timing and they're the strongest right now, they need to use their timing. This person needs to say how he wants to do it and in advance when he's gonna have this. Because otherwise you have one person micromanaging everything and then it's almost like
Right.
he know let's say I'm person A, this guy is B. Like if he hits his timing, he should know it better, right? Otherwise, I might as well be playing his role.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like he should know this timing.
So timing is actually a really big component of
Yeah,
Dota, right? Like different heroes sort of come online at different times based on the items they get, the experience that they get, and so they have a different impact depending on what
yeah. So
happens.
overall, it's more of a. I think
Okay.
in the past this was less. This was more of a thing where you could have one like captain that just communicates the most. Now I think it's more of a team effort, where there are definitely times where I communicate more, where I'm the captain of my team, but this is not like I have to do this. It's more like if I feel like I have a good overview of the game, I can communicate it more because maybe I just see some things that others didn't see at this
Mhm,
point, but it's not required. If
mhm.
someone else has a good read on the game, they
Right.
should just share what they have to say.
So that's so in this so just about this particular thing, right? So we've developed a couple of apps, like couple of pieces of software for our research, where we are able to, so just in voice communication, just like using voice recording and like is it I can't remember if it's voice and movement, but like we can sort of see at any given time period who is driving the communication, and who is, which of the components are more of like more receptive and more reactive versus driving different the different driving the whole conversation. And we can also sort of see where there are transitions between, like, okay, this guy is the driver now, and then this guy is the driver in this time
Oh, that's
frame.
interesting.
And we can identify all these cool things, so we can see, like, okay, so it'd be interesting, like, okay, like, let's say there's a part of the game, and or we're like identifying a looking at somewhere sort of, let's say, mid lane. It's level 6, he's online, but for some reason he's not the driver of making the movements around the map right now. Let's say, like I don't know, pick a hero who comes, who is I don't know, any
Yeah.
random hero, right? And he's supposed to, like, at that point he's supposed to sort of take over and be like, okay, guys, I'm gonna do this, come here, do that. But it doesn't happen, then we can say, hey man, why didn't you do that? So, like, there's some cool tools that we can talk about. But yeah, that's interesting. Timing, coming online, that's a huge deal. So obvious. So Dota has, let's say, broadly speaking, three phases, right? Like, so the early game, which is like the laning stage, 0 to 15 minutes ish, right? Depending on, okay. So does that depend on when the towers go down? That's what I want to ask. Like, when do you realize? At what point do you like? Are you guys like, all right, so this is kind of over, let's sort of transition? Is there like a is it do you like is there like a moment where you know, or is it just something that
Um,
happens, like, okay, well, who knows?
yeah, it definitely comes with experience as well, but I don't think it's hard to describe it in a static way like that, like 0 to 15 minutes, because it really
Mm,
depends. Where there's one lane we've played a lot recently, it's Crystal Bait and Pudge, and in this lane you want the lane as long as possible, preferably, because this is a very strong lane, and not many heroes want to lane against this. So with this lane, we usually stay together as two for 8 minutes, maybe a bit longer sometimes. But then there's other times in one of our most recent games where we had both supports from the side lanes leave the lane at minute 5:30, and we both went towards the mid lane,
mhm.
because in this specific game that was just the best thing to do. In this case, we abused the timing of our mid,
Right,
where our mid was confident and he
right.
communicated that now is the time to open, like, we're basically destroying the game in a way where we take the initiative. He is ready before their mid is ready, and we, like, this play basically broke the game. But this is very game
Mhm.
specific, where maybe after that I return to my lane. This is, like, overall you can simplify it with these times, but I think it's like the better teams get, the more complicated this gets. But I don't think many teams are really
Right, right,
that
right.
good at it, because it takes, for this to work properly, you need really good communication and people to be confident. Like, otherwise, it's gonna be random. You won't know when to do this. So for this, communication
Yeah,
is
and you don't want people like,
is just the most important.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah, you don't want people like what I do what I just did, which is like shout over each other and just be like, hey,
Yeah, well, you
go
kind
do
of need
this,
to
go do
know
this.
beforehand,
So
but
everyone sort of,
you cannot over
yeah.
prepare. I think this is something we did, for example,
Mm,
before TI11, where we were over preparing in terms of our game plan, where now we are more
mhm.
loose in the sense that we understand the possibilities that might arise, but then it will be very dependent on what happens. Because you cannot predict, there's too many variables to predict how it's going to play out. You can understand that there's a concept potentially at minute 6 we can do X and Y, but then we need to see how it plays out. We cannot just force this. What if things go different?
Right,
Maybe it's
right,
better to do something else now.
right. So yeah, man, Dota has so many different bloody things, right? Like there's the whole drafting thing, which is the whole other thing we can talk about. And then there's the actual in-game, yeah, the whole in-game thing, right? So, like you said, you have a plan essentially when you like. So when you're doing the draft, right? When you're picking your 5 heroes and banning heroes, you there is a like a sketch of an idea that you want to implement, but then how that transpires really depends on the in-game actions of your opponents, and like random, and then there's random drops, right? Like
Yeah.
items that just like that adds a whole another dimension to it. um uh like, I honestly don't remember when they introduced this random item drops to neutrals. Like, it's been a while though, right?
Um, yeah, my timeline is a bit skewed due to this pandemic stuff. I think I think it was around that time,
Yeah.
probably. But it's hard to say. At that point, life felt a bit weird. It's
Right,
like
right,
a
right.
big.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of lots of pseudo randomness going on in Dota, but this is cool. So the time changing nature of sort of who's driving the team, depending on what who comes online first, and what the lane situation is. Maybe like, the Beastmaster has just pushed down your lane in like 3 minutes and everything's complete disaster.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Okay, cool. That's nice. All right. So let's talk about the group stage in TI, and I think now I can tell you, like, it's fine. So the data we have right now that I'm using is all the matches from two TIs, just the group stages, right? And we limited ourselves to that because we want to see, make sure everyone had the same number of matches if
That makes
possible, and
sense. Yeah.
then the main
Yeah.
event. Yeah, the main event, like, things, everyone doesn't have the same number of matches, right? But I'm not like so what do you is there a difference between, so now, okay, there are three things, right, for Dota now. There's the
Yeah.
DPC, right? Let's call that like the regular season, right? The DPC. Then you have major tournaments inside the DPC, three
Yep.
major tournaments, and you have inside of a tournament there's a group stage, and then there's the
Yep.
playoffs, right? Okay, so first let's talk about, is there something you notice as difference between different, because I know I listened to a podcast about I think it was No Tail talking about how the DPC is broken or something, like the way they allocate the points, because, or like, the performance in DPC is not reflective of performance in TI. I don't know how true that is, but um is there a difference you notice between DPC matches and, let's say, even a match in a major, or like in the TI? Anything comes to mind?
Um. Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about this as well, but for a big part, I think I disagree. Where the group stage at a tournament like TI and at a major, which are the big LAN events, usually you play
Mm-hmm.
the early phases of these tournaments in a hotel room. There are cameras here, but DPC also play
Mm,
with cameras, so it feels very similar,
right.
at least from my experience. Like I haven't been around in the scene before this was implemented long enough to experience the counterpart, but it feels very similar to me. Where of course there's a bit more pressure. This is the World Championships, so you know that. And your first game, it's like feels a bit different, but then okay, you're just playing. It feels very similar. And
Mm,
I think the main difference would come when you play in front of a stage, or a stage, when you play on a stage in front of
right.
a crowd, where this can influence some people when you have never experienced this. But that's just human nature, right? That's like, if you never experienced it, of course you're gonna get influenced by it the first time. Maybe it's
Mm,
always gonna feel hard for you to do this, but that's very personal. I'm not sure there's too much to draw from that. One of my teammates in the last year was more influenced by this at the first time when we played in front of a crowd, but after that
mm,
he was used to it, and now it's no problem. So I'm not sure how much there is to say about that. I think it's very comparable, to be honest. The all the different sections.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so that's okay. Well, I'm not gonna. I can't say too much about the results that we have because we want to try and publish it first, like get it out
Yep.
there. Because that means that means like people that means other scientists have to like look at it and make sure that I didn't fuck up, and like and like I found something that's just complete garbage because I just can't do math or something. So we're gonna hold off on making any prescriptions now, but like it's curious to know because one of the biggest things that we're concerned about that we're looking at is how does the coordination and the behavior between players change over time, right? And that means over months, matter of months, or over the course of a tournament, like from the start of the group stage to the end of the group stage. What's changed? Do you get better? Do you get worse? Like, what do better teams do something differently? So fundamentally the question is like, okay, what makes good teams tick, right? That's what we're trying to find out using our particular tools and the research of complex systems. So just to give you like a idea of I mean okay, if you search on Google what a complex system or like what a dynamical system is, you'll find lots of stuff. It comes from sort of a physics background, but the gist of it is that uh, a collective phenomenon like coordination, it comes from interacting components that change over time, right? And that's the general idea. Okay, and so we're trying to investigate that using mathematical models. That's cool. So playing on stage is probably yeah, it's playing on stage. What was it like for you the first time you played on stage in front of a crowd?
um, yeah. So that was also last year for me. So it was my teammate when we played in Sweden
Mm.
at a major, and it was interesting because that was the first I played on some smaller crowds or stages before, but it wasn't really
Mm.
the same. And beforehand, I always felt like I'm not gonna feel like stressed. I always felt like I'm confident. I know it's not gonna affect me at all. Not sure why I always had this feeling like I just knew that was the case. Maybe because I just always competed in things my entire life, so I felt like why should this affect me? And that was actually the case. But that's very it's not really it's very case study you could call it where that was just for me
Yeah.
where I just didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
Like I also
Mm.
made sure like when I walked on stage I didn't like look at the crowd too much. It's like, hello, I'm here. I'm just gonna do my thing now. Then after the
Yeah.
games is over, I look
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
crowd because I just want to be in the zone.
Yeah.
And it is
Yeah.
definitely interesting for me specifically because I'm very hyper aware or hypersensitive. Where
Mm.
whenever the stage shakes a little bit due to high vibrations, this can affect me a bit.
Gotcha.
But as long as I don't hear
Mm.
conversations that people have, then I'm all good. Because otherwise, I'm one of those where if there's a lot of conversations in a room, I hear every conversation. So after 30 minutes, I get a headache. But luckily that was not the case. I could only hear my teammates. The rest, it's like brr, brr, brr. You don't hear anything that you can
Gotcha.
understand.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I was lucky with that.
What what's it like inside one of those booths at TI? Is it like is it pretty good like sound
So
wise?
this TI there was no booth actually.
Oh right.
And I was
Oh yeah,
actually
that's right.
part of one of
Man,
the teams that got the
you're right.
experience where there were some sound issues where I could already hear this before the game where I said, I think I can just hear everything. My hearing is very sharp and I felt
Uh-huh.
like, okay, I don't know if
Yeah,
everyone has
yeah,
this,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
can hear everything. And they said, no, don't worry about
Mm.
it. When the game starts, you won't. Okay. The game starts. During the draft, I can already hear the commentators all the time. So I tell them, yo, this is a bit weird. Like we're drafting and then they hear the commentators say, oh, this is not the best. And they're, no, wait, this is good. It's like I have to, it's very interesting.
That's
And during
ridiculous. That would be
this was
so
unreal.
annoying.
This was my first game at TI, elimination best of one, and I just hear everything. But
Yeah, yeah.
there was nothing I could do about it. I
That's
informed
nuts.
the admins, but they couldn't really fix it in the moment. So this game, I could actually hear the commentary during the game, This is probably the weirdest experience. Hopefully, I'll never have to
That's
experience
so
this again.
annoying, dude.
After this game, I had a full headache,
That's
but it was
so
very
annoying.
weird. Like I kind of there's nothing I could do about it because my teammates didn't all hear it, but I could hear everything. Like I have the same headset, but it just doesn't block it for me. It doesn't work. So I hear the caster saying like, okay,
Jesus Christ.
if he's lucky, he's gonna see Roche respawn or something, or maybe he's gonna be lucky. So I thought, wait, what? Okay, I guess I'll stay in the pit for 10 more seconds. Oh, it
It's
respawned. Big surprise. It's very weird.
oh
It's
my
like
god.
what can you do about it, right? It's very weird where you don't know what your decision would be,
Wait,
but
it's not delayed.
no, it was they were just
It's
this
not
was at
delayed enough.
they were just standing there, right, doing commentary for the audience. It was just not
Oh,
blocked properly. They
Jesus
fixed it
Christ.
after this,
Okay.
but yeah, that was
Okay.
interesting.
That's weird. That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, this year's TI there was no booth. There's none of that, right? It was like a bit of a man. A lot of people talking shit about this year's TI though.
But yeah, they fixed
Not
it pretty
really,
quickly. Where there
not
was
very
just
happy.
some, I think there was just some white noise implemented in the TeamSpeak that we use for communication, where the white
Uh,
noise blocked out the commentary. Where now it sounded just like what I was used to at the previous tournament I played, where it just sounds like you can hear something, but you cannot hear audible words. It just sounds like. Brrr.
that's cool actually. That's some
Yeah,
pretty
and
science
we
shit there.
also at the first game
Um.
we only used the headset. After that, we used a headset and in ears. So you had to put the in ear below the headset, and the
Ah.
headset was with white noise and to block the audio. So that worked pretty well.
Gotcha. 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 Nice. 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 So next is Lima, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
next on the agenda if it
that's a big
happens.
thing.
But nothing I can do about that. So
So
we'll see what happens there.
what do you mean? What do you mean if it happens? It's not like what is
I
what is
mean,
there a
in
doubt
Lima
about
right
this?
now, the situation is. I've only read a bit about it. Where okay, yeah,
I have no
there's
idea, dude.
there's some protest.
I am so out of it. I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
out of
there's
it. Like
just
what the hell is going on in
I
Lima?
don't know how this happened, but in Lima specifically, there's protests right now against the president, and a lot of I'm not sure exactly
Oh
what's happening.
Jesus.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna say things that are not true, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and
Yeah.
see what
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus, man. That's well. There you go. Try, man.
I cannot complain, right? I'm safe and sound at home,
That's
so I'll just see what happens.
yeah. For no that. No, I know. I feel you. Like yeah. This is like the fucking Olympics. You're trying to get trying to like take it all over the world, and yeah, gonna be
Yeah.
problems. It's gonna happen. Um, but like people, so what people are obviously they were talking shit about the prize pool for this last TI. They weren't very happy. They weren't very happy about that. Like, man, I've been following this game. This game has been more okay. So let me tell you what happened, right? So before, like, there was a time in my life where I played lots of video games, right? All kinds of video games, like shooters, strategy games like Age of Empires, StarCraft, like random games, all kinds of games, right? And then I don't know when, I can't remember when this happened, but Dota came into my life, right? And every other game just sort of vanished from my periphery. And all we did, all my friends and I did were like come to school, talk shit about each other, and then go home and play Dota. And then come back to school the next day and be like, "Why the fuck didn't you cast that spell, bro? Like he was right there, man. Like we could have won." That was my life. And so I've been following this game for so long. And like it's funny, right? My mom, her favorite hobby was like little, like I don't know if you ever experienced this, but like do they still use the term like plug pulling
Plug pulling?
in
Ah,
Dota?
I
Like
see.
when someone,
I think I
yeah,
know what you
plug
mean, but
pulling, when someone drops out. Exactly. When someone drops out of a game, right? When someone's dropped out, like they say PP, like which basically means your mom walked in and pulled the cable out of the wall because you're playing too much Dota, right? And back then, the idea of a multiplayer online game just didn't compute, right? So the idea that I couldn't pause this thing and just come do what you want me to do was, it's like, what do you mean? That makes no sense. It's a video game. Just pause it. Like then I'm like, I can't. Like it's other people, right? So it's funny now, right? Now, I just tell my mom, yeah, I used to pull my plug and stop me playing Dota. Now I'm doing science with it. What's up? Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, nope, still made the best decision. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. But so I got on this tangent because like I've been following Dota for a while. Like obviously for me, every TI is a treat. Every tournament is a treat for me, right? Like, dude, like when a major is happening, like I'm like, guys, don't call me, don't text me. I'm not coming out to hang out with any of you. Like it's not gonna happen. Just leave me alone, right? Like doing TI, like TI. I'm just at home watching the matches, right? So I'm a huge fan, but I know people had problems with like. But what do you think the whole like? Do you have any thoughts about this whole situation with the prize pool and like the whole the different like having the battle pass and then having half of it later? You know, Reddit will has its own opinions, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like it could be.
as a pro player,
Yeah,
as a pro player, like
I think it can be
what do you think?
structured a lot better for sure. Where there's also this discussion that has been going on of why isn't the prize pool more spread out over the year as well? You don't have to do it a lot, but just a few
Mm,
percent would already go a long way. And
yeah,
besides, like specific this TI prize pool, like there's obvious flaws and there's a lot of things I don't agree with, but I'm always like I can think and complain about this a lot. Like I shared my opinion with people, but then that's really all I can do. Besides that, I can. It's like you're gonna
yeah,
be very annoyed about something where you don't have that much influence on it. Where I wish it would
right,
be a
right,
bit
right.
different, but it is what it is right now. It's also not that bad. So it's only
Yeah, I mean, dude, like the thing is like lot of new players sort of have no like they like a lot of new fans of the game sort of have no
yeah.
perspective, right? Like so like I've been with this thing for like almost I don't know 12 15 years now, and like it's like we we used to host tournaments for like freaking like McDonald's vouchers, bro.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, if anything,
Right,
it's more
like
important for me that the game like stays alive and has good support behind it long term, because I think it's a very good strategy
yeah,
game
yeah, yeah.
and
The
like
support.
this individual like right
Oh
now
yeah,
being as good as possible. Yeah, that would be nice. But what's more important is that it's better over time. I think that's what I care about more.
yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, like I like that there's a DPC because I get to see more Dota. Like, that's all. That's all that I really care about.
Yeah, I think
But
the system is pretty good, but there's also just old players that think something else was better, and now all of a sudden you have people grinding hard, and then they feel, oh, now we also have to grind, but
mhm.
we don't want to do that, and then you lose out. I feel like you hear that a lot as well.
So what's the speaking of grinding? So like, what's the play if you want to be a professional Dota 2 player? It's like you have to get to the top of the MMR. Is that the most direct path to doing this?
It definitely helps, but it's not the only thing that matters. Like last year or 2 years ago, before or 1.5. Wait a second, 1.5 year ago, before I made the team that I'm on right now. I was very high rank. I was the highest rank support in the world. I was rank 8, I think, in Europe, and no one was higher in the world. But I got
Mhm.
invited to some decent teams, but there are in 2 teams from Asia, and besides that, no one asked me. So MMR is definitely not everything, because there's also people look
Right,
at
gotcha.
experience. If you're gonna join a team, people need to value you, right? You can have the highest rating, you can have the best CV in the world, but if someone doesn't hire you, then you can just hang the CV on your wall and look at it, but it's not doing anything. So, but if you're
Yeah,
actually,
for sure.
so
Trust
if
me, I
you're
know the
actually
feeling.
getting, if but that's why your focus should just be improving, right? Because I knew I'm really good, so I thought I could go
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
Asia, but I don't really want to do that right now in the stage of my life. So then I just made my own team, and
Mm,
I knew it was gonna work. And we just showed, we kind of just had to show the world, look, we're here. We just bulldozed our way in. So if you're actually good enough, you're gonna get there. It's not an issue. The easy way, of course, is just
gotcha.
being almost good enough and getting picked up. but you need some luck for that. So you
Mm.
cannot. That's like that's something that's out of your control. So you should just focus on what you can actually control.
That's great advice. So speaking of Asian teams, like there's a lot. I mean, people tend to think there are different play styles depending on the region. Is that your experience, or is it just like a myth?
No, I think that's definitely the case. I think it's less of a thing nowadays where everyone is getting better and better very quickly. So now people, you get like this
Mm.
one thing that, like the meta evolves so quickly now that it becomes more of a thing globally rather than region specific. But it's still region specific in recent times in China. They played a lot slower, where it felt like you can abuse this really hard if you're from the West. But when Chinese teams played each other, it was
Mm.
a lot more about execution because they both did the same thing. But nowadays, it's hard to recall a long time before that. But this is mostly because recently I've actually experienced playing against them, so that's more in my memory. And I'm not sure if it's that much of a thing anymore. I think this is fading away more and more the better every region and everyone gets. Where now it's more you will have specific players that are good at specific things, and a team will use their players properly, but their entire play style is
Mm.
not going to be region dependent. I think it's more team dependent now.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay, it's good that you brought this up. So I want to talk about the meta game because, like, most people have trouble understanding Dota just to begin with because it's got a hell of a learning curve. Like to actually start having fun, I think you need at least 100 hours of playing to actually like to know because otherwise it sucks, right? Like
Yeah,
you're just getting crushed and like people are just flaming you.
I'm not sure. I enjoyed the start a lot actually. I just played a different hero every game. I
Really,
just look at
dude?
the spells.
You're a different
I
person,
mean,
man.
this was a long
Jesus,
time
that's for
ago.
me.
This
It's
was
awful.
before rating was a thing in most games in 2012, and I was just
Yeah,
playing, and like winning or losing didn't mean that much to me. It's like, oh, I won, okay. Oh, I lost, okay. It was like just using the spells was fun. And like, oh, this is a cool spell,
gotcha,
and
gotcha.
then just shooting some spells,
You're
you
a
know.
better man than I am, man. I'll tell you that for sure. Like, man, in Sri Lanka when we were playing Dota on like Dota One, on Warcraft. So someone had to host a game. Okay, so this is some old time shit. Let me educate you, son. All right. So like somebody with a fast enough internet had to host the game so that everyone else can join and play, right? And in my country, maybe like three people could afford that 2 megabyte per second internet connection. Okay, 2 megabyte per second. That was the gold standard, right? And you were like, and maybe three people could afford it. And those fuckers who had that power to host games, they ran everything. Right? They decided who plays, who doesn't play. Like if you're like it doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter how much your teammate wants to be there. If the guy doesn't like you, you're fucked. Right? like we hope like so and like the guys who could afford it were like adults with real jobs, right? So we'd wait for this guy to come home after work and like host a game for us and then go have dinner with his kids. Dude, it was
Yeah,
a it was a
that's
it was a
crazy. It's not
nightmare.
even that long ago if you think about it.
But
Things
yeah, it's
change
not that
quick.
long, it's not
That's
that
pretty
long
crazy.
ago. Yeah, and yeah, then Valve came along. You're like, nope, you can play who you want, where you want. Oh, also like uh, disconnects. That was not a thing. Like if you disconnected, that's it. Game over. Like like if you didn't save, like the only way is to save your game every 2 minutes, right? But like 2 minutes in Dota is a lot. A lot can happen in 2 minutes, right? So that's it. No disconnect. Like no reconnecting. None of that shit. Like it's over. But what the hell? Sorry, we're on a rant again. But the point I was trying to bring up is the meta game, right? So one common idea is that so at like TI or like any tournament, the meta game sort of evolves as the games go on. Like, can you elaborate on that? And like, is that an actual thing? Again, it's just a myth, or like, what's the deal?
No, this is definitely a thing where this is where you can see the strategies that you were not aware of in action. For example, this
Mm.
happened very recently to us in our first game in the DPC a few weeks ago. In our first game, we played against a strategy that we were not as familiar with. We saw it a little bit, but we didn't feel like it was that good. And then it looked way too good in this
Mm.
first game. So okay, we could have definitely won this game, but this looks really good. And we feel like it's not that hard. So then we played it ourselves in the second and the third game, where we won with it against them. So this was full on adaptation. Like we never played this before, and yeah, so the only reason we played this is because we saw them playing it against us in this case. But this is where when you're practicing in private, you can have a lot of strategies saved up that no one really knows about. We have done this as well in the last TPC, where you just all of a sudden you pull something out that no one has seen before, and everyone is kind of
Mm.
forced to adapt in that sense, where either people will ban your specific strategy or try to use it themselves. And I think that's just something that happens at every tournament in a way, because you've just seeing others play something is one thing, but especially when you play against it, this is when you really feel it the best, and it's easiest for you to also use it. And then it kind of spreads because now you're
Mm.
also maybe using it, and then others play against it. They also see you playing it on their analysis, so they think maybe we
So
should
it kind of
also
like
try it.
feeds. It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah, and
It's
sometimes
like a
this goes
feedback
too
loop,
far for
right? It's
sure, I
like
think, where
so.
at TI for certain strats, looking back, why did everyone start trying this? Yeah, it was pretty good, but it wasn't that good. It's almost like you get a bit brainwashed in a sense, where what is going on? Why is this just a thing now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
it can work for sure, but
Yeah, so
you
like,
need to stick to your own things as well. But it just happens naturally as humans. You're like, oh
right,
no,
right.
if we don't try to use it and then we lose against it, or we lose without trying it, then maybe we fucked up. So maybe we should just try it as well. But it's like a lack of confidence,
So
maybe.
okay, so in that way, and so let's talk about Secrets grand final, right? They were pretty like they kept with that Leshrac
Yeah,
pick. They were pretty happy with that, regardless of what happened. I mean, and I watched AUI break down the drafts, and he was like, okay, he actually thought like he actually gave props to the fact that they were like, okay, we're confident with this thing, that we have this idea that it can work, even though we just got crushed, we can make it work. So that, like, I guess that's a kind of call you make when you're in the game, right? You're like, okay, well, how do we change, or like do we just like, look, we this is what we want to do, and we're gonna
yeah.
stick
I
with it.
guess this is very interesting. This is also something that plays in team dynamics, where like I saw these games as well, where I don't feel like this pick made them lose. Where I saw they just got super crushed in certain lanes, and the game snowballed really hard, and Tundra played really well on the map.
Mm.
Where yeah, this pick was maybe not the best, maybe it was good. It's very subjective to talk about that, but it didn't really. It was not like this thing changed. This is why we lost. Not at all. But here, sometimes it can, depending on your team dynamics, if you get crushed real hard against by something or with something yourself, sometimes it can be better to change it just for the sense of dynamics. Where I agree with AUY what he said, where it's
Mm.
very good to stick to your guns, but you need to be able to handle it. So we had this last season when we played against Liquid. We ended up losing the series, but in the first game we played against a Brood Mother. This is a very specific hero, and we didn't. Our draft was not the best. We didn't execute properly, and one of our players didn't feel too good. Like, do we have to play against it again? But our coach gave a good pep talk, and we're ready. We're gonna play different. We're gonna play tempo. We're gonna just crush them this game. And the sense in the room was, or like the aura in the room was, okay, we're just gonna own it now, and we played against it again, and then we won. But if that's not the case, even if in theory you shouldn't be afraid of this thing, if in practice you feel a bit bad to play against it again or a bit afraid, then you're kind of set
Mm.
up for failure in a way. Like confidence matters a lot
Right, right,
for
right.
these decisions. Where I guess this is something with team dynamics where it's very important to be able to understand each other as well, where not everyone is going to feel 100% confident all the time. And I think it's good to
Mm.
adapt to that as well, or just to make sure everyone can function to their
So
fullest.
when you're drafting, when you're in the drafting stage, like how do you vary your planning? So if someone, so like, when I used to play when I used to play quite a bit, like there are sometimes where like I'll see the picks, but I'm like, but I feel like I want to play a certain hero. I'm like, no, I'm in the mood to play this guy. Like that whole what that mood means, I don't know, right? It could be from experience, like, thousands of hours of Dota, right? It could be like me actually doing some math that I'm just not like, it's actually some math that I'm doing in my head. I'm just not consciously aware of what the math is, right? It's like, but it comes out as a mood. It's like, oh no, I feel like playing Jugger
Yeah,
right now, you know, or I feel like playing this guy. So when you're drafting for like a tournament like TI, like, uh, if how do you balance that, like with your, how do you balance your plan with what, for example, your carry says, no, I don't want to, like, I don't want to do this, or like your mid says, or your support, or like other team is like, nah, not feeling it, like, does it happen, or is everyone just like, that's the plan, let's go make it happen and get
yeah.
it
So
done?
this is something interesting. We can talk a bit about this, comparing it from TI to how we do it now, because right now it's polar opposite
Yeah,
to
for
how we
sure.
did it at TI. Because at TI we were
Mm.
working with a different coach, and the way we did it was our coach did like 95% of the draft, where we talked about some things beforehand and we kind of knew what to expect, but at the end of the day, like what we're drafting and what we're playing, and when we pick it was his decision. And the benefits to this is that everyone is on the same
Mm.
page in what we're doing, and we don't feel worried about it, or we shouldn't have to feel worried about it because this is just what we're doing. And that's basically how we ran it in that sense. So at TI we didn't have this thing of, are we sure we want to play this? It's more like we are gonna play this. And if anything, it's like, should we? What do you think? Like, let's say, asking me, what do you think, Seleri? Do you think this is the best? Do you think X is the best here or Y? And then I say, I think Y is probably the best here. Okay,
Hmm.
then we go with Y. But it's not like, what do you think is good here? And I look at 100 possibilities and then I choose something. It was more very specific. The questions were specific and directed. So we had like one person leading the entire strategy phase, so to say. That's how we did it at TI.
Right. And now.
Yeah, I can just talk about how we do it now. Now we this is something we discussed after TI, where we felt this is not, from our perspective, this was not the best way to run a team with us as players, where this is going to be
Mm.
very subjective and dependent on the players and maybe the region as well, on the culture of people. But for us, we felt like we had very experienced players and people with really good ideas, and we want to use this more. So we felt it made more sense to incorporate everyone's ideas better in a way. Where now,
Mm.
just like before, we talk about drafts beforehand, and it's not going to be a big surprise what we're going to be playing during the tournament game because we already talked about it beforehand. But how we make our drafts is very based around everyone's ideas. Where some people will implement, or not implement, some people will give more ideas than others. And that's a good thing. If we have 5 people going crazy with ideas, that's too much. So we mostly have 3 people
Right.
and our coach helping to coordinate it, to give all the ideas and make the drafts around it and test them out in practice to see if it actually works and how we can make it better. And this kind of gives a feel where we feel like we're using everyone's potential, but also everyone's brain better. I guess not sure how to put it.
Gotcha.
Where I think I have a lot of good ideas, but I cannot have better ideas than 3 people combining their ideas properly. Because I can only think so much in a
Mm.
day, how you could say. The more
Gotcha.
ideas you
Gotcha.
can
Yeah.
emerge and make a good plan out of is feels better. But then there's the drafting stage during the tournament where you need to decide right now what you're gonna play, and this took a little bit of time to get used to. Where I do make the decision for the most part, but at the same time, when we're deciding for someone specific or we're thinking about what makes sense to follow up, besides the start of the draft, which you
Hmm.
can practice and prepare for, we I'm not entirely sure how we do it actually. It's very intuitive where I'll ask I'm picking we need to pick a hero now for one person and this person gives his input for the most part, maybe one other guy. We have an idea of what is probably good and we kind of just gets decided by him and me where he will just say at one point he'll like make a decision kinda and I just check if he wants this and then we just go for it. It feels very intuitive. It's
Gotcha.
like a team process, but this is very dependent on dynamics probably where if people to be able to do this you need people to communicate well, people need to be confident, and the atmosphere needs to be good so you actually get like the results that you want where you don't
Gotcha.
get you don't make too emotional decisions. It needs to be rational enough that it makes sense what you're
Yeah.
doing.
So one of the things that like I mean, if you're a pro carry player, right? You've played, I don't know, 10, I don't know how many thousands of games, right? And like your brain, the way it works is like it's good at building these patterns, right? And it's like and it it learns the things. There are certain things that it learns that you're not even consciously aware of that you're doing, but it's just patterns that comes out as instinct. So like, oh, here's what I should do now, or like, so some of the things that when you watch replays uh, of pro players, and we think, holy shit, I wouldn't have thought to do that in a million years. And like, in a sense, they're not thinking about that either. It's just like it's just like firing off and like like you do it so quickly because you practice so much and you learn this pattern over thousands of games, right? It's interesting, like, yeah. So when you're playing when you're picking the heroes you want to play, it's obviously very different from like a all pick pub game, right? Like, you have an idea, you wanna you kind of know what you kind of expect, kind of understand what the opponent is bringing to the table, what you expect them to do, and then you sort of
Yeah, you're also
play that
thinking from
play that together.
an us perspective, not a me. It's like you're picking for five people instead of
Mm.
what do I want to play.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because the pub game is like,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
just
what
deciding for
what the hell do I
yourself,
want to
right?
play now?
So in that sense, it's like infinitely more
That's
complex
interesting.
where you need to combine everything.
That's actually it didn't occur. That's super interesting. You mentioned that. It didn't occur to me. Like, that's a big difference, I think, because like you said, in a pub game, you're deciding for sort of deciding for yourself, and in a pro game, or like a structured game, deciding for five people. That's huh. I mean, I guess pub games would be better if people had the same mindset, but you know how pub games go. So like, when let's say, so even so by that in that respect, even a super high MMR pub game is different, do you think, from a like a team, like a pro, like a pro match?
Yeah, you cannot really compare it at all because once
Oh, okay.
people um and it kind of makes sense in a way, right? Like when you're really good friends with someone for a long time, you kind of feel each other and you talk differently than when you're with
Oh,
some
for sure. Yeah,
strangers,
yeah.
even if you're, let's say, you're playing football with either your friend that you know very well or just random people that are very good, but you just don't know what to expect. So now you amplify that a
Mm-hmm.
hundred times where you're practicing every day, you're talking every day with these people, and now all of a sudden you play with someone maybe that's equally skilled, but you're not used to each other. So obviously that's gonna look
Mm-hmm.
way different. You cannot. you cannot even reach the fullest potential of everyone because you cannot use it, you cannot utilize each other in the same way. Where even with something, I think communication is extremely important, but that takes a lot of time to develop. So when you then try to
Mm.
communicate properly with someone where you didn't get the time to develop this, it only makes sense that it's gonna be worse. It's not anyone's fault. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Gotcha. No, for sure. Okay, so man, all so when you're talking, like all these like things come up in my head, right? So I'm like, okay, shit, I gotta ask him about this now, right? So like, okay, um, uh, when you like, obviously, so one of the things we're interested in, okay, at least that I'm interested in, I don't know who else is interested in this shit,
I'm
but
interested.
is like, is is other. So even though Dota is a 5 player game, right? A 5-10 player game, let's say, but you're 5 players on the team. They're like pairwise relationships that sort of form, say, within the game, right? So one obvious example is in the
Yeah,
laning stage where one guy goes in the current meta, at least one guy goes mid, two people go on to separate lanes, and then there's a thing there, right? So in your role as a support, um, do you guys work on specific relationships within the game? So like, do you and the carry like practice like as doing things together, or like like you get the idea? Like kind of
yeah,
what I'm
I
saying
get
here.
what you
Like,
mean.
are there pairwise relationships that are like worked on consciously in the game?
Um, so yeah, that's definitely a thing where you need to have a good relationship with everyone, of course, but it's always going to be a bit more specific with people that you play with the most, especially since this is what I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier. This starts in the laning phase, and you do this every single game. So if you're good at this, then you're already setting yourself up for success or for having a good game. So this is extremely important,
Right.
and this is something you we practice also in, not sure how to call it, in like a more focused way. We did this more in the past where we play 2v2. So what we do is we play one of our
Mm.
lanes, so me and my teammate that I lane with the most, and we play against our own team, their lane. And then we do a 2v2 and we do this 10 times in a row every
Mm.
day. And then you just get to practice this in a vacuum over and over and over again. Instead of having to play a full game where you play this for 5 minutes, you just do this over and over and over. So you get better at this and you get to know each other better. But I think for most teams and for us as well, this is something that forms over time where you need to understand how you also how you communicate in here. Where in my lane, for example, when I lane with my carry player, that's Anton, we know how we communicate in this lane, where he takes the lead in some of the things, and he just does the calling here, and I don't interfere because then we're talking over each other, and this also makes sure we're on the same page. So
Mm.
for last hitting, he will say when I should hit when it's under the tower. If I'm not certain if he will get it, he will let me know, unless it's very obvious and we already know in advance. But we just have this communication, so we're
Damn, to that level of detail, like,
yeah. So it's very interesting. Where for us, for example, this is very simple communication where he says hit, and then I hit it at the right time so he can time it properly. There was one one funny anecdote that I have on one of
damn.
the days in our last bootcamp. For some reason, he's from Russia, and I think his vocabulary is slowly expanding because on this day he started saying, "Can you please hit? Can you please hit?" And he said this 6 times in a row. And I said, "Yo, bro, what is going on? Are we just gonna do it like this now, all game? Because this is very funny. You need to imagine we're 5 players, right? So the other lane is also trying to talk, and you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
the entire communication is,
yeah.
"Can you please hit?" It was very funny. It was very proper. It was good grammar, nice wording, but maybe not. It was maybe not the time for it.
Right. No, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
That's
pretty funny.
hilarious.
But yeah, it's
Um,
very. You need to feel each other for this, for sure. And it's interesting how that can work. For
ho-
example, in our team, we also do it a bit different where we switch this up, where it's almost 50-50. in which lane I go. The supports, we just mix it up, and we're so used to each other, the four of us, that we can do this because most teams don't do
Mm.
this. You need to have very good feeling for each other. But what was I thinking? Um, yeah, it's interesting how relations work in that sense as well, because you all need to have a good relationship with each other. And
Mm.
I'm not sure yet what is the best, but for example, Mike, the player that I lane with the most, we are very different. I'm very, very sensitive. He is not so sensitive. I'm a bit more introverted than extroverted. He's very extroverted. And I
Right,
exercise
right.
a lot. He exercises not so much. It's like we're like polar opposites, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're still good friends.
Right, right,
But
right,
in
right.
a way, it's kind of interesting where these dynamics are probably good to have. I think in a group
Mm.
where probably the most important, rather than all being the same, is I wrote a few things down that I think are most important in groups that I was thinking about. Now that we're talking, where
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Let,
I
let
can
me
write
hear.
it in this. I'll just say that. So for players, because I was thinking, right, like how does it work in a team when you make a team? Like what do you want from everyone? You want everyone to be good. Okay, that's great and all. No need to like everyone knows that, right? You want good players. Okay, that's great. But then what
Yeah,
specifics do you look at? Because there's always in every sport there's a lot of good
yeah,
players. That's nice. You always have some star players that are just worth more, even if they're assholes. But yeah, then I think the most
yeah,
important things of
for sure.
for players specifically is probably just communication, confidence, and how you let's see how to describe this properly. How you like not having the need to be right. Basically, having your ego managed.
Mm.
Not sure how you would write that. Where it's always interesting in sport, you need to have an ego in a way. Like I think I'm one of the best, if not the best, in my role. But at the same time, if I get some critique or something I can work on, then that's great because I can learn from it. But in the game, I think I'm the absolute best.
Mm.
Because if I in the game and I think, oh man, I'm playing against this guy is so much better than me, then I you cannot function. So you
Right,
need
right,
this.
right. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure how you would call this if there's a term for it. Like you need some balanced ego, I guess. I think these are the three things.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to no, I mean, like, you have to be confident enough to trust your own, like, instincts and decisions, right? Like, because you have to believe in yourself
Yeah,
at some level, right? And you need an ego at
yeah, for
some level
sure.
to do that, right? You can't walk into a game and think like, "Man, I'm the worst player on the planet. This fucking
Yeah,
sucks." Like, you know?
but you're also playing in a team, right? Let's say you're playing chess. It's 1v1. You can have the biggest ego ever, and
Yeah.
who cares? Like even if you're an ass to your teammates, you have no
Yeah, yeah,
teammates.
yeah.
But in a team game,
Yeah, yeah,
like you
yeah.
have to. This is, I guess, this flows in with the communication. Like if your communication is not good in and out of game, it's just not gonna work over time. Where these are probably things that can
Mm.
predict over time how likely a team is to be successful, I think. Because people definitely change. I've changed a lot over the years, but you cannot predict if someone will change for better or worse. But what you can see is is how someone is right now. So I think that's probably a pretty good predictor because this flows in with what I think is the most important to have in a team, which is atmosphere. When the atmosphere is good, this is how we felt at our last bootcamp. This is the best atmosphere we've ever felt in a team, where there's almost this aura in the room, like we know we're gonna win. And then when we don't win, that's all
Mm.
good because we're still feeling good and we just learn from it and we move on. There's been one instance where I was a bit too emotional in a game where I almost came across a bit toxic, but the communication I did give was very good for the game. So after the game, like no one is mad because we're all having a good time and the atmosphere is good. So people just tell me you you could have chilled down a bit, like you're talking like I'm a dog, almost like on a leash, and it's like it's very you could feel in the communication in this moment
Oh
how
man.
good it was. Where I also knew, yeah, I kind of did it. Like it's my bad. I'm sorry about it. And then they're
Yeah,
also
yeah,
not mad about it
yeah.
because they know it was good intentions. And I think very often these are like the moments where if you cannot, like, if you just pretend nothing happened or you're just mad at each other, that's not productive at all, and then it doesn't feel like a team. Like,
Mm.
you need to, the atmosphere needs to be really good, and I think it probably flows from these first 3 points where if you lack in one of these, even if it's just one player, it gradually gets worse over time unless it gets dealt with. But dealing with one of these issues is
Right, right.
very hard unless it's yourself. If you're the problem, that's the easiest because you can try to work on yourself. But if it's someone else, then you can try to help them. But at the end of the day, you don't know if it will change and if it will affect
Mm.
the team overall.
Absolutely. No, so I mean, you brought this up at the right time because I was going to ask you like, what do you think makes a good team? What do you think makes a bad team? And I think you've been spot on with
Yeah, I'll write those 3 terms down. I'm
what
not
you've
sure
said.
if that's the most important. It's very interesting to think about it in that sense, what you also said, where you want to be able to put it into numbers in a way, right? Like, think like, what qualities do you
Mm.
can you look at beforehand to predict, or in hindsight say these are the things that matter? Because there's always going to be random things. I think people also overvalue this, where like a team wins the world championships and, oh, they were amazing, they did everything perfect. Yeah, but they also just got lucky. Like, we're not doing some randomized control trial with placebos, and like, we just have this one tournament, right? This is it. You need a bit of luck.
Yep,
You
yep,
need to
yep,
perform right
yep.
now, and then you can win it. And then
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you have
yeah. It's
to.
crazy.
You can try. I don't know. We just go too crazy on this. Like, the team that won the last world championships or any tournament, any game, they just performed the best right then and there. But they don't need to have the best team dynamics.
Mm.
Maybe if you play the tournament 100 times, you can see who actually had the best team dynamics, and they had the most chance to win. But like you said, like, maybe there's a prediction 90% chance they'll win, but that's only 9 out of 10, right? I don't know if you've ever played poker, but if you have 95% chance to win, that's 19 out of 20. You're gonna lose quite a bit if you do that
Yeah.
more than one. Doesn't sound like a lot, but five
That's true.
percent is
That's
quite a
true.
bit.
No, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. That's true. Like, man, yeah, especially in something like Dota, like it's like sometimes sometimes someone just someone just like gets in the flow and makes some plays that you were like, what the how the hell, like, and then you all of a sudden like 10K net worth difference and like it's game over, game
Yeah,
over.
or like in football,
Yeah,
you
it's
can see it
crazy.
the same, right? I watched a bit of the World Championships, where I watched most of the games from the Netherlands, of course, where they were playing Argentina and they're 2-0 down, and my family already says, okay, it looks like it's over. But I mean, I don't know. I'm always very dry when I'm watching this because I compete myself, so it's like I'm
Mm,
just chilling. Okay, we'll see what happens. And then they score twice in the last 10 minutes, and all of a sudden the game is different, right? They could have won this game, for example, and then Argentina wouldn't have been able to win. But at the same time, maybe they would have just lost 2-0 if they didn't get these two miraculous goals, and there wouldn't even be a question. They still ended up
mm.
losing. Like, all these things, they matter so much, right? When people look back, oh, they were just the best, but it was so close. They had the luck on their side as well. But it's easy
Gotcha.
to just look at the end result. It's like when someone
For
completes
sure.
their study, it's like,
As
you did it. But like, you missed the entire road,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
that happened.
Exactly, exactly. No, for sure, man. Like yeah, I understand better than most. And like speaking of competing, like what's the vibe these days about like being a professional, like player, esports professional? Like when I was growing up, if I told my mom in school, or like when I was 18, 19, that I'm gonna go be a professional Dota 2 player. Dota, there was no Dota 2 then. Dota player. She would have fucking disowned me, and that would have been the end of that story. But like, what's the what's the vibe now? Like, it seems like things have changed since, of course, people are making millions of dollars now.
um,
But
I mean, I
still.
think it's very similar to other sports now. You could compare it, where if you want to try and you feel like you have the potential to do it, you can. and I think more people accept it that it's a thing you
Mm.
can try. But at the same time, most people don't become professionals, right? Just like in any sport, a lot of people try, and like 0.01% or even less actually make it. So just trying to do it, that's great and all, but you don't know if you're actually gonna make it. So I think it's very similar to other sports where
For sure.
if you feel like you can do it, then it's probably worth a try as well, because you don't want to regret things. And I think we're always nowadays we are a bit too crazy in or addicted to being young. You're young right now, so you need to like go crazy, study 16 hours a day. Like there's always a time. Like if I wouldn't have made it, I learned a lot just from trying to go pro as well. You learn a lot about
Mm.
relationships and how dynamics work when you try to work together for something with high tension. And I would have just done something else. I would have just started studying something, or who knows what I would have done. I think we
For
we
sure.
tend to think a bit too
Yes.
black and white in a lot of aspects, where it's like it's either this or that. No, you can. It's
Yeah, I
not black
mean,
and white. You can. There's a lot of things in between.
yeah, exactly, exactly. You can. Yeah, he's right. Nothing's a dead sentence. So, like, I mean, like for me, I did it. I studied engineering first. Then I worked in like a bunch of different things. Like I was in a travel company for a while. I was a project coordinator for a while. Then I was like, no, fuck this. I'm going back to university. And now I'm here studying AI and like all this other stuff. So yeah, definitely, like a
You never
bunch of
know in
stuff you could.
advance. In hindsight, you think, "Oh, that was crazy, crazy journey," but you couldn't have predicted it, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So like, now we should look back and say, man, that was a hell of a ride. Like I'm like, and everything that happened, everything that happened was like, could have been terrible, but it led to you being where you are right now, right? And that's it. Dude, okay. So I'm not gonna take up much more of your time. Like this has been super useful, by the way.
I've had
Like
fun.
you should know that because like it actually gave me a lot of like so when I write it gave me a lot of insight. For example, my intuition about the pairwise relationships, I'm glad that's actually a thing and that's actually practiced, right? And these are the kind of things that we can sort of examine and visualize and see with the methods we have. And it'd be awesome, like, so hopefully once we get the research done, and like I'll definitely let you know like what we find. And I think it'll
Yeah,
be
I'm looking
interesting for you
forward to it.
guys. What I wanted to ask, yeah, I also wanted to ask, like, would you guys be like, no, okay, you know what, like what aspects of, like, let's say your team coordination and your team, like, because you said it's such a big deal. What kind of things do you think could be enhanced with like working with someone, like for example scientists with like our team? Is there anything that you think could be benefited from?
That's interesting. These things are always very interesting because I know you only know what you know, right? There's always things, and whenever you learn something new, you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that."
That's a,
So I'm
no,
trying
for
to
sure.
think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it
yeah.
because at the end of the day, I think everything can be better. I think we're in a pretty good place right now, from my perspective, right? This is my perspective of my
Mm,
experiences. I feel right now we have a very good way of working. So it's very interesting because it's hard to say for me what could be better right now. But at the same time, looking
mm,
back, I kind of thought this at certain points last year as well, where I thought the way we did it was pretty good. So it's very interesting because this is probably something I would need to discuss
okay.
with my teammates as well, right? To see, because this is how I view it right now, and I think most of them will agree because we talk about it a
Mm,
lot. But it's very interesting to think like how your experiences change the way you think it is going right now. Because I think it's going really good right now, and we're in
for
a good
sure.
spot based on my life. Kind of. That's how your worldview is formed. Kind of. So I think there's probably a lot that can be better,
Absolutely.
but it's actually hard to understand what can be better.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked is because, like, would you guys be interested in sort of like working with us, and like, like answering some question, like basically in a research capacity, like do some, like, filling a questionnaire before your tournaments, and then like we'll track your stuff during the tournament and like see what happens, and you can fill in a questionnaire afterwards, like stuff like that. Would you guys be down to like do something like that? Because that'd be really nice. And I think we
Yeah,
can
I
learn
mean,
something
it's
interesting if you're
I
interested.
cannot really answer it myself, right? Because I think it could be very interesting. but I'm
Yeah, I
just
don't
one
know
out of
for
six,
sure.
right?
Just like
So
just yeah. Float it to your team because like this is kind of research that we're doing, and it'd be awesome if you could like just work together on something that'd be legit, and you can put it
yep.
out there. But dude, I'm gonna let you go because it's been an hour and a half, and you have been super generous. I want to wish you best of luck. I hope Lima works out for sure. Like first of all, the tournament works out, and second of all, I hope you guys do well. Um,
Yeah, thank you
is
very much.
there anything you wanna say to your fans before we wrap up?
Yeah, but I have no idea who is watching this, right? But I hope it was interesting.
Do it like I don't. I mean, like I'll post this link to this
Yeah,
on their
yeah. I
subreddit,
mean,
so like
I
people will
hope
probably
everyone
probably
that
listen to it.
listened to this all the way found it interesting. 'Cause it was very interesting for me sharing my
This was great.
experiences. So
I found it super
yeah,
interesting.
I hope people
Yeah,
had a
it
good
was
time
this is
and
legit. So I don't know who
people
else
are also
can.
looking forward to the research
Yeah,
as much as I am.
nice, awesome. All right, man. Yo, thanks a lot again. Best of luck, and we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good.
This has been another episode of the One Deeper podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.